Hi, everyone. Ted Wyman here with another edition of Jet Setting playoff version, just ahead of Game 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs second round series between the Winnipeg Jets and the Montreal Canadiens. I'm joined by Winnipeg Sun hockey and sports columnist Paul Friesen to talk about the suspension to Mark Scheifele of the Winnipeg Jets. He was handed a 4-game suspension for charging for his hit on Montreal's Jake Evans, which knocked Evans unconscious and left him with a concussion. Paul Maurice said it was excessive. Mark Scheifele said he thought it was excessive. Paul, what are your thoughts?
It's a little more than I expected, but that tells you what player safety has done in the past, right? They're so inconsistent. So I expected maybe 2, as Paul Maurice did, but I think it's well deserved. I wish they'd come down hard on this kind of stuff more often than they do at player safety. Unfortunately, they don't. So how can you call for harsher ones for other people and then, when it's someone here in Winnipeg, say it's too much? So no, I think based on the injury and the actual act, I thought it was the kind of suspension that sends a strong message, and that's kind of the whole point.
I think Paul Maurice called it precedent setting, and in a way it is, because it's a 4-game suspension in the playoffs, which they say would equate to about a 10-game suspension in 82-game regular season. That is a pretty harsh suspension for a first-time offender. I'm not sure how that plays into it, Paul. Of course, the Scheifele has been a clean living human being and a clean living hockey player for 8 years. He had a moment of, I don't know how to even put it into words. He had a lapse in judgment in terms of making that play. He really should not have hit Jake Evans. He shouldn't have hit him at all. I don't think he should have hit him the way he hit him, obviously. And it was a pretty devastating result. And, I think he has to own it, and the Jets are owning it because they're being punished heavily for it. But do you think that, what did you think of Mark Scheifele's comments when he came out today and talked for about 15, 16 minutes, not really contrite about it, that's for sure?
No, you could tell he felt terrible at the result. He was in shock immediately after at the result. But and I'd use the term reckless for the play. You were searching for the word reckless, I think. He dug his heels in, though, on his intent. And I don't think that would have played well with the player safety people. Even though the video clearly shows he took one hand off his stick, stopped reaching for the poke check, and lowered the shoulder and braced for the impact. Mark says his only thing in his mind was to stop that empty net goal. Well, you're not going to question what he says he was thinking. So I'm not saying he's lying about that, but the fact he didn't really own up to any kind of mistake. He didn't say he'd do it differently next time. He didn't say he made an error. So insisting he did nothing wrong, I think probably, I'm guessing it influenced player safety in their decision as well. So that's what struck me about his meeting with the media today. Was digging his heels in kind of on the play, and he made some good points. He kept his shoulders down. He didn't lift himself up. He didn't explode upwards, but the hit still was high. It could have been lower. It started on the chest and moved to the head pretty quickly, and he had to know that at the speed he was traveling, that kind of hit would be devastating in the result.
Absolutely.
So, he was in a real tough spot. I'm sure all the way down the ice, he was trying to prevent that empty net goal. The Jets still had a shot to win.
Injuring the guy?
No, of course he wasn't thinking about injuring
the guy. I don't think so, anyway. I mean,
he's bang on when he says he plays like a lily white player all the time. He never does anything.
12 penalty minutes this year.
Yeah, and he pointed that out. He says he never had a charging call or something. All that aside, though, he still did what he did. His competitiveness may be getting the better of him, and I can't help but wonder if he'd lost his cool a bit earlier in the period as well, right? Taking the roughing minor, very uncharacteristic of him. And I can't help but think the frustration of the scrums he was in had him wanting to hit someone. But hey, take him at his word and judge him for his action, and that's what we do.
Right, yeah. And it was really interesting, Paul, because the the gamut of expectations for that suspension from hardcore Montreal fan to hardcore Winnipeg Jets fan went from, 10 games minimum from a Montreal side to 0 games from a Winnipeg side, because there certainly are people who would agree with Paul Maurice that it was a clean hit and should not have been suspendable at all, although Maurice did admit that probably 2 games was he was resigned to the fact that it might be 2 games. But, one thing that really came out in Scheifele's press conference today too was that, those reactions that people are having, this thing really has made a big mark in the hockey world. And the reactions that people have been having have included, he says, threats and bullying and harassment of his family. And I think that's really not good to hear. It just makes you kind of sick that society feels like that's an appropriate thing to do, or some people in society think that's an appropriate thing to do. And, Mark he said he can stand the punishment. He can take it. He's a man, but, leave his family alone, because that hurts him.
I was surprised to hear that it extended to his mom and dad and his brother and sister. I mean, you and I are online with our work all the time. We hear it, we feel it too, we get it. And I'm sure he expects to get it, especially from Habs fans. But to go after his family, that's never happened to me. Yeah, I feel for him. And he got really emotional talking about it. I mean, he's really tight with his parents and such a clean living guy. And yeah, you felt for him for that. There's no place, absolutely no place for it. Unacceptable, as he said. But how do you stop it, right? It's the online world we live in. So he said phone calls, though, too, that people were phoning his parents. I don't know how that happens, but yeah, sad.
And I mean, we all know that the online world has created, a space for anonymous keyboard warriors, and that part is unfortunate. But, there's still a series to be played here. Game 2 at Bell MTS Place on Friday night, and then games on Sunday and Monday in Montreal. Just quickly, Paul, how do you think things play out from here? I mean, I don't think there's going to be a real need for fireworks in terms of that hit on Scheifele, in terms of retribution, because he's been punished pretty severely already.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think the Habs would be really silly to go that route, and I don't think they will. Where it goes from here, though, boy, you look at last summer's bubble, right? Without Scheifele, the Jets went down quickly to Calgary. They should be better prepared to handle it, but only if Paul Stastny's ready to play real soon, like Friday tonight, or at the very latest Sunday, Monday. Because now they've lost Dylan DeMello on the blue line for a week, right? So suddenly it's adversity, which they haven't felt all year in terms of injuries. I think they're better equipped. They're a deeper team than they were in last year's playoffs. But again, if Stastny's not ready, it could be in a two-zip hole pretty quick. I think, though, the Jets, I get the feeling they'll rally around this. Adversity tends to bring the best out of them. It has at times. So I think they'll rally around this, and I wouldn't be surprised if they pull one off in Game 2 and make this a series still. But the Habs will have something to say about that, eh?
Yeah, and they did win Game 2 in the bubble in Calgary last year without Scheifele and Patrick Laine and Mason Appleton, for that matter. Right. I just want to say that if ever there is a time for Pierre-Luc Dubois to step up and start being the player that he was in Columbus last year, especially in the playoffs, now is the time. The Jets could really use a major contribution from a player who has not scored since April 5th.
Bill, you're right, but they'll take it from anyone. They'll take it from fourth line guys. They'll take it from Adam Lowry, right? Matthew Perreault. But you're right. Pierre-Luc Dubois has got to be one of them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Paul, thanks so much for doing this. For Post Media, you've been watching Jet Setting.